अस्सलामु अलैकुम। मैं ज़मीर अहमद अंसारी और आप देख रहे हैं जेड न्यूज़ फॉर यू। अर्ज़ यह है कि आपने अपने चैनल जेड न्यूज़ फॉर यू को अभी तक सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है तो सब्सक्राइब कर लें और साथ ही दिए हुए बेल आइकन को भी दबा दें, जिससे हमारे आने वाली सभी वीडियो के नोटिफिकेशन आपको मिलते रहें।
Including the education and dissemination part and outreach part of the museums. We've in fact already made plans as a follow-up to this, that this be seeded as an annual institutionalized flagship event of the ministry in times to come. So this will not just be a one-off event, it will have consistency with different themes. And as we are all aware, the theme for this year's Museum Expo is drawn and inspired from the ICOM theme, which is the International Council of Museums, called Museum Sustainability and Wellbeing. As you will appreciate that this is coming after the lockdown experience. So there is the focus on sustainability, and sustainability is both financial and also environment sustainability that we are talking of. And of course, well-being is because we want to move from museums as a sangrahalaya to museums as a cultural space. We live in an age of anxiety, so that explains it. Looking at the stakeholders, we have tried to invite everybody from the national, regional, state, directorate level down to the village community and individual level. मतलब जो आखिरी इंसान है पायदान का, जिसके पास भी अपना प्राइवेट कलेक्शन हो सकता है, उस तक को भी सर्वे करके निमंत्रण दिया गया है. नेक्स्ट प्लीज. अब मैं आपको बताना चाहूंगी कि इस म्यूजियम की क्या विशेषताएं हैं. What are the broad contours or components of this Museum Expo? First, of course, is the inaugural session, as the Honorable Minister has apprised us all that the Honorable Prime Minister has very kindly consented to be the chief guest and to inaugurate this expo. Then, of course, you have the museum's sessions. We have 7 master classes by international and global experts on different aspects of the making of a museum, right from architecture to light to acoustics to programming to museums in metaverse to storage to sustainability, conservation, everything. Then we have 11 panel discussions which will cover and showcase 75 museums across the country, irrespective of whether they are village, public, private, government. Then we have workshops and films also on museums. Then showcase of virtual museums, so that is because of digital intervention. Then the third component is the museum exhibition. The exhibition, there are 3 kinds of exhibitions that we have curated. 75 star objects from museums, MOC museums and museums around the country, which will be displayed in physical, digital and digital format. Then we have also focused attention on the book covers, 500 book covers of books written from pre-independence time right down to the present time on museums and around museums. Those are being showcased to focus our attention on the research that goes into the making of a museum, the library aspect of the museum, and these will all become part of an exhibition, an art installation, and selfie points for people to enjoy the whole expo. Then we have another this is a private-public, partnership, where we are showcasing a digital audio-visual exhibition on the Ragmala series. I will not say much about it because I really want you to come and experience this yourself. Then the fourth component is something called the Techno Mela. And this is something that has never happened before in the museum space at all. This is all about the supply chain and logistics around museums, digital technologies, the equipments, the vendors, the manufacturers, the light installation part, and also for networking, because the states and the districts and the individuals who are curating museums, even ministries, will get an opportunity to network with these kind of people who bring about the latest state-of-art technologies. And also this is a space where gamification of museums is going to take place. And a lot of this you will experience immersive experience. The last component of the museum, the broad contour, is the conservation lab, for the purpose of drawing attention of all the visitors to the museum, and also the need for policy advocacy and policy making on this aspect of conservation. We are setting in a walkthrough in situ conservation lab, an actual lab with dummy objects around all kind of material evidences and objects, in which the conservation will be actually done during the 3 days. 100 plus students from different academic institutions, universities and colleges will partake this conservation appreciation course. There will be parallel sessions on disaster management in museums, the free scheme of DST, photogrammetry and laser scanning of buildings for conservation. And there will also be meet the experts. There will also be a round table chaired by our secretary so that we will hear from the experts in the field of conservation and be able to come up with policy making around conservation to develop museum professionals in the field of conservation. Next, please. I'll now take you one by one through the various elements that I've just mentioned. Next, please. So we will talk about the inauguration by the Honorable Prime Minister. We are greatly thankful to him, and this inauguration will take place on the 18th of May, 10:30 a.m. To 12 p.m. We will appreciate everybody who's sitting here will receive invites closer to this event, but we will appreciate everybody takes their seat by 9 p.m. This will take place in hall number 2. All our exhibitions, our Techno Mela Conservation Lab will be in hall number 3. The rest of the event, the master classes and the museum panels will be in hall number 2. The Honorable Prime Minister will be unveiling and launching and inaugurating the following elements. There is going to be an International Museum mascot. We have contemporarized the dancing girl, which is the star object of the National Museum. This is going to serve as a mascot for the International Museum because this is the object which represents our Sindhu Saraswati Sabhyata. Then there is a graphic novel. Can we move on to the next, please? I'll show you each element in detail. So the idea of doing this, we are inspired by the concept of the Yaksha and the Yakshagini, which adorn all our temples. So there's an ancient inspiration to the modern mascot. There's also the ideas, we are connecting this to the Honorable Prime Minister's thought process of focusing attention on the merchandising in museum, the toy industry, and that is why this has been stylized in the form of a Chenna Patnam toy. We are not showing you the actual pictures because we want the surprise element to remain because this will get unveiled by the Honorable Prime Minister. Next, please. This is an effort that we thought was long due because we really wanted that museums should become a part of the syllabi of the school-going children as a way to focus attention. But we are beginning with a small step which is called Introduction of a Graphic Novel, which is titled A Day at the Museum. This is a small story which has been scripted about school children from a Delhi Sarkari school who visit a museum, understand the jargon of the museum, understand what a museum is, understand the opportunities for education and the opportunities for careers in museums. So you can be a museum professional. Even if you want to be a security guard, you can be a security guard at the museum. If you're qualified, you can be a conservator, you can be a curator. If you are an ITI skilled person, you can be a carpenter or photographer in the museum. So that is the idea. As part of skilling India and creating museum professionals. Next, please. You know, when we are asked to make policies for the government, data is a criteria that allows us to do policy making. And we thought for the longest time we did not have an official, authentic, census survey-based directory of museums in the country. And this is what we are trying to fulfill by getting this launched by the Honorable Prime Minister. So we have surveyed about 1,200 museums across the country with facade pictures, with latitude, longitude, names of the directors, the full address, with all details that are required, which would serve as a very, very essential tool for networking even amongst and between museums. And this has been compiled by a National Museum Institute. Next, please. You know, this is something that we found that this was lacking in our domain in terms of how the tourists and visitors consume our spaces. As we all know, the Kartavya Path has come out as a very, very open and democratic space for artists and for audiences. And we really wanted people who come to visit, both domestic tourists and international tourists who come to India for the first time, to be able to partake this space in the correct sense, along with its historical antecedents. So what we have done is that we have made a map, and if you can see the check-in points, These check-in points will actually tell you the story of all the government institutions, cultural spaces that exist, all the Kota House, the Jaipur House, the Bikaner House, the National Archives of India, the National Museum, MGNA. So people who come here for the first time will be able to understand. And we are also mentioning the kind of programs that we do in the Kartavya Path, the Astronite Sky Tourism, the Akam Kalanjali program. Next, please. This is the illustrated museum card. So the idea is that every aspect of the museum should be showcased through different sets of people and different age groups, profiles, interest groups, through different kinds of things. And the focus also is to ensure that these become our souvenirs that can then become available to public, because public has a different way of consuming the museum. So people who want to buy, this is also like a mini directory. So the top 75 museums of the country, which we thought were engaging and interesting enough, have been reduced to playing cards. So this is a deck basically which you can buy, and 75 because it's the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. And these will also give you an idea of the museums that are worth visiting, that you should go and visit. Next, please. Yeah, so there is, in the gaming community, there is a gender bias, because most of the games that have come about, very few games are non-violent games. Most of the games like the Blue Shark, etc., are very violence-based games and attract the male community more than the female community. This is also a platform which is available and open for us for informal conversation to see the idea of museums. So we have developed in-house, for the first time, the Ministry of Culture has developed a game which will be available for people and children to play, which is based on museum. The name itself says it is the Indian Museum Tycoon game. It's a 12-level game, which is a very sophisticated level. 12 levels is really, really very, very advanced level. The idea is that children will be able to curate a museum through the three-dimensional objects of the National Museum and other MOC museums, which will be available in the game itself. And through the game, they will learn the various aspects of museum management and grow from being a museum intern to a museum director. So the idea is that if you failed to not read the graphic novel, then you can play a game if that is what interests you. If you didn't buy something, then this is another way that the museum gets introduced to you. And this will be available both on the Android and the iOS. Next, please. This might interest a lot of you because this is something which is very, very important for us. This is a virtual walkthrough which will happen of the National Museum, which is to come up in the North and the South block. It is going to be called the Yuge Yugin Bharat. It is going to come up in an area of 1.7 lakh square meters with 950 rooms. We have done a virtual curation of how this entire building of the North and the South block will look once the museum come up, and this is also going to be inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister. Next, please. Then there is a bunch of inaugurations that our Honorable Culture Minister is going to do, which is going to happen on the 19th, just before and during the ministerial panel. So these are some of the elements. Next, please. I'll take you through each of these elements. The handbook on conservation, I thought this was also very, very necessary because we need to develop at least 5 regional conservation labs in the country, and we also need to allow and enable the museums that are coming up in the central ministries, in the state governments, and in the private space to learn what is a checklist for a conservation lab across different kind of material objects. So the idea of this is to focus on prevention and to be able to know, it's a directory and a checklist for people to be able to set up the conservation lab in the museums. Next, please. This is also something that has never happened before. So we have curated about 500 books which have been written on and across museums, about museums, throughout the various libraries that we have in the country. It is not an exhaustive list because there are many. This is only an illustrative list of the books that we thought we liked. and we are bringing a compilation. This will be very, very good for both the museums and also the researchers. People who would want to have a compilation will have to do no mehnat on this, because it's a readily curated thing. It has all the details, the publication, the ISBN number, so you can actually go and buy if you want to curate your museum library. Next, please. There is an audio-visual quiz after every session on every day as a breaker. We will be having one round of audio-visual questions, and these have been curated. There are about 10 rounds which will happen throughout the 3 days. This will be open to the audiences, and some very interesting, quirky questions that you this is also our way of introducing the museums to the public. You think you know about the museums, but when you see the questions, you'll realize that there's lots that is yet to be known about the museums. Next, please. Then this is a hands-on activity area. This is the highlight that we are doing. There are several such programs throughout the Museum Expo, but because of the paucity of time, I may not be able to take you through all, but this is one very interesting facet and element that is happening, which is again going to focus our attention on the Sindhu Saraswati Savyata and how our museums came about as a result of excavation efforts. Right, so we are going to focus our attention on the excavation part. There is also a panel later on, as you will understand, but this is an area for the kids. So the kids are going to get introduced. So they will be wearing aprons, which will say, I am an archaeologist, and they will do excavation. They will find, dummy relics and ruins, and they will have a map. They will also have a museum passport. So they will get stamped. So there will be something that they will carry back while they are learning. So this is like a nice, interesting kit and activity for the children. Next, please. Yes, just as we are flagging off the Museum on Wheels today, which has been designed by the NCSM, we are also doing collaborations with other museums. The idea is that the government should also collaborate with private museums and enlargen the circle of this collaboration when we talk of museums, keeping museums and citizenry in the focus, in the center. So we have collaborated with the Chhatrapati Shivaji Vastu Sangrahalaya, and they are sending us 2 buses. So these buses will be doing publicity. They've already started from Mumbai, and they'll reach us here on day 1 of the Expo. The buses will be available throughout the day 3, and then they will again go on a tour of the entire Delhi and NCR region, and from Haryana and Rajasthan they will exit back, taking the learnings from this exhibition and also entertaining the people as they go. Next, please. Then this is another very important thing. If you all recall that on the 11th of January 2020, when the Honorable Prime Minister visited Kolkata, he made an announcement about the 5 cultural spaces that need to come up in these 5 cities of New Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Varanasi and Ahmedabad. So we have managed to now firm this up, and 5 MOUs we will sign with different nodal departments and agencies to kickstart this announcement at the Expo itself. Next, please. I am now going to take you through the various museum sessions quickly. Next, please. There will be 7 masterclasses by global experts, and I will just take you through the various sessions so that you know which sessions would interest you for your presence. So day 1, we have 2 masterclasses. Making of a museum is basically everything architectural about the museum. How do you do a green field? How do you do a brown field? What is the size capacity of the galleries? How you should make the galleries for seamless visitor flow? How is the philosophy and the theme of the museum, the storytelling, the curation? So everything will be covered in session 1. It's a master class. Then we have a master class on gaming in museums. Next, please. Day 2, we have 3 very interesting master classes. The first one is in collaboration with the German light vendors and manufacturers. They will be doing a master class, which will be an immersive experience. So we will not have this regular stage. We will have a stage which is in the form of a booth and a museum gallery, and we will show you how light installation is done for different kinds of sculptures, different kinds of paintings, different kinds of artifacts. You will be able to view the thing happening in real time as we speak. The acoustics in museum is a space which is a little less explored, so Himanshu will be doing this masterclass for us. Museums in Metaverse will be done by Saurav Raj. He's an IIT grad, and we've been working with him to develop smart contracts for sale of vanity, which is the NFTs basically. Next, please. Then we have day 3, we have 2 master classes. Tim Reeves, he's the Deputy Director of the Victoria and Albert Museum. He's coming all the way because they have just right now shifted 2 million objects from the east to the west coast in the Olympic Park from the old post office building. And he will be sharing his experience of how scientific storage, which is accessible to the public and the researchers, can be done. And the last masterclass is in audio-visual archiving, which is something we have not focused our attention much on, which is how do you archive all the press briefing, all the voice notes, all the film clips that we have. So the focus will also be on archiving of audio-visual artifacts. Next, please. So as I told you earlier, we have 11 themed panels, 75 panelists, 2 very exclusive and interesting panels I will discuss. Next, please. So this is the panel on day 1, which is breaking silos. As we are aware, about 20 plus ministries are also curating very interesting and different kind of scientific, cultural, tribal, textile, maritime museums across the country. And we have got all our secretaries from different ministries to talk about their experience and showcase the work that they are doing. So these are the secretaries who will be there. I really want to point out one very interesting thing that we are doing. Dr. Uma Narayanan is the registrar of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has a museum, and 9 of the high courts have museums. So she'll be talking of the judicial museums. Aparna ji will be talking about the scientific museums. These are very different things which will come, will of course happen, and our secretary is going to be delivering the keynote address for this session. Next, please. Day 1, we have another panel on the lifestyle for environment, which is the ecocentrism that we want to bring out in keeping with the COP mission that India has adopted, and the G20 theme, and also the ICON theme of sustainability and climate change. So these are the various panelists who've done some very, very interesting thing. You can Google and figure out. I don't want to take much time today because there's paucity of time. Otherwise, I would have explained each panel and each museum in detail. Then next please. Then we have transcending boundaries. This is a very, very special panel because this is a panel which is museums without physical constructions. They exist in the virtual space. They exist as between 2 humans. They are museum of memories, basically museums of everyday objects, which are very, very temporary museums, which are not museums with bricks and wall and mortar. Next, please. Then day 2, we open day 2 with the Honorable Ministers panel. We have all our Honorable Ministers will be speaking at the panel. We will also have a panel discussion. We have invited all state, culture and science ministers. We will try to incorporate as many as we can. So as of now, as we speak today, about 14 culture and science ministers from different states have consented to be a part of this panel. And the idea of this is to speak in collaboration on the Vision 2047 of the states around the concept of museums. What do they think about museums? What are their achievements? What are they doing? What are the policies for museums, museum professionals and museum supply chains? Next, please. This is an interesting panel where the focus of attention or conversation is on curation and collection. So we have Sunil Munjal who will be speaking on the Serendipity Museum. We have Anna Aklan who will be speaking on the Hawk Museum from Budapest. Then we have different people. Gauriji will be talking of the Pradhan Mantri Museum, and Lakshya Singh Mewar will be talking of the City Palace Museum in Udaipur. So they will be talking of what they have done, how they have curated, what are the kind of collections they have, and what are the learnings that they have for us. Next, please. This is a very special panel because it's a case study of how some of the iconic museums in the country have managed to get everything right from the construction to the concept to the curation to the storyline and also to the programming and the sustainability part. So we are showcasing the Bihar Museum, the work that has happened in community and village museums in Ladakh, then the Tribal Museum of Madhya Pradesh, the Vadnagar Museum of Gujarat, which is coming up, and also the Museum of Music in Meghalaya, which is an entire village, which is a museum, which is what people also talk about when they talk of why is the need for museums in the country and demuseumization. That is where this panel fits in. Next, please. This is a panel on the archaeological site museums, and we have about 52 in the country. And these are all archaeologists, are specialists, very, very senior and reputed people who will be talking about their experience of excavation and curating museums around archaeological findings. Next, please. Day 3, we begin with 3 keynote speeches, which are all very different from each other. Manuel Rabate, who has set up the Louvre in Abu Dhabi, is going to speak of how this collaboration with the brand name of Louvre that has happened from one country to the other and what they have done. This is a very unique museum of where with less collection and long-term loan agreements, they have set up a museum, which is fantastic. Then Sachidan Nanji will be talking of demuseumization and what some set of traditionalists feel about museum making in the country. And Rajiv Sethi, because he set up the first museum, will be talking about collections and curations and setting up of museums through collections. Next, please. Often when we talk of the museum space, we forget to focus attention on the publishing and the programming. So this panel has some people. We have Alison Barrett from the British Council talking of the creative economy, because Britain is focusing a lot from the point of view of providing employment to the people in the AVGC space. Then we also have people who are into publishing, and we are also talking of the Indian Culture Portal, which is an MOC initiative at this panel. Next, please. The Ecosystem Enablers is a panel which is devoted to all the museum architects, consultants, creative people, script writers, content creators, fabricators, designers, visualizers, and this is something very, very important because we want the state to also be able to meet up with these kind of people and to take the museum making in the state ahead. Next, please. Day 3, we have a panel on keeping afloat, which is all about sustainability. So we have the resident commissioner of Rajasthan from the Bikaner House, we have Sabyasachi Mukherjee, and we have a whole lot of other people, Vinod Daniel, Asad Lalji. They'll be talking of how they've managed to get the footfalls and the revenues right and the programming right in the museum. They'll be giving their own experiences of what they have done, which is different from other museums. Next, please. I will speak in short about the various exhibitions. I've already told you there are 3 exhibitions, 75 curated objects. Next, please. 75 curated objects from 25 plus museums, 50 digitally displayed, and Gauri Krishnan Parimu is the chief curator. She'll be also doing a guided tour of this. Next, please. There is an exhibition of 500 book covers on books related to museums, museology, and a pictorial bibliography. This will get converted into an art installation for people to absorb the research part of the museum in a different manner, and also will be available for selfie points for people who access the museum space. Next, please. This, I told you, is a very interesting exhibition, and I'll invite you all to come and see this because this is a digital exhibition. It has the audio raga according to the season and the painting embedded in the picture itself. So you see the painting and you hear. So we are trying to access at least 3 of the 5 senses that we have. Also 4 if you're allowed to touch it, of course, then that becomes tactile. Next, please. Then we move on to the Techno Mela. Yeah, this is the first of the kind networking opportunities, supply chain focus, logistic and technologies around museums, museum projects. Some of the museum projects that have come about, we are also highlighting. This will have state museums. We have given booths free of cost to the states, to the central government, to the PSUs, to the individuals, to the village and community people. So you will see all different kinds of museums and vendors and consultants displayed here. Next, please. This is the conservation lab. Next, please. Yeah. So we have an in-situ conservation lab where subject matter experts will be drawn from the private and the public sector. They will talk about the art and science of preservation and conservation and restoration. There will also be a roundtable conference. We have got 16 vendors who will be displaying their X-ray machines, their various kinds of gadgets and equipments for people to understand what is it that goes into the making of a museum. And this will work wonderfully well in collaboration with the book, the handbook on conservation, because then you see the handbook, you see the equipments and instruments, and you meet the experts, and then you are at least oriented towards making of a conservation lab in your museum. Next, please. Outreach activities are an absolute must. So after this, we will be flagging off this bus, which will go to various places in Delhi and NCR, universities, colleges, malls, institutions, ministries, ITPO. There's a route chart. We will follow the route chart and try and disseminate information about the International Museum Expo. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. So there are some very interesting cultural programs that are happening. 3 of them I will mention. Each day ends with a cultural program so that all of us can relax after a heavy day. So this is something that we have specially got done. Through the cultural program also we are focusing on the museum so that you are able to, if you don't read, if you don't play games, but if you are a person who enjoys watching theatre, so then this is for you. This is called the Dastane-e-Ajaib, because storytelling is a very, very essential and integral part of how we convey the museums to the public. So this is a storytelling session which is all about museums. I'm not going to reveal much because you have to hear this. It's a very nice, interesting script. I hope you will enjoy it. This is being done by Dr. Himanshu Bajpai and Pragya Sharma, and this comes very well researched. Another cultural program, not really a cultural program, but a cultural gastronomical experience, if I can say. This is by invite only on day 2, which is we have curated a food menu, 3 kinds of different thalis on the humor or the constitution of a person, which is going to absorb that food based on your dosha, which is the kapha, the vata or the pitta, whatever dosha you have. And the food will be according to that dosha. You will be given a small quiz to do, and based on the answers of the quiz, you will figure out what your dosha is, and based on that dosha, you will have small 3 colored balls. You will put that ball in front, and the chef will know which meal to serve to you. So this will be interesting. It will also have musical experiences along with it. Next, please. There is one more cultural program which is specially being curated for this, which is based on, it is called the Tal Vaad Kacheri, which is the Indian Instrumental Orchestra, which will be on the last day. Now I'll run you through the day-wise itinerary just for the ease of how each day flows. Yes, please. Day 1. Day 1, of course, we have the inaugural ceremony. Day 1, we have 3 panel discussions, 2 master classes, and we end with the Dastane-e-Ajaib. Day 2, please. Yeah. Day 2, we have 3 panel discussions, including the ministerial session, 1 session on the case studies, 3 master classes, and a networking dinner for all our guests. Then we have day 3. We have 3 panel discussions, 1 case study, 2 master classes, and 1 cultural program, which I just mentioned, the Tal Vaad Kacheri. Next, please. These are the numbers for people whom statistics is of value in terms of understanding what we are doing. So we have 7 master classes, 11 panel discussions, 75 global experts participating through booths. Russia is bringing about 10 booths. 10 of their top museums are coming as booths. 14. So this number has got changed in the morning. There are 14 state culture and science ministers who are coming. There are 10 secretaries, 30 cultural institutions, 15 global museums, 1,200 museums, 55 techno-mela vendors, 16 conservation experts, 3 exhibitions, 75 star objects, about 100 stakeholders, different kind of stakeholders, right from individuals to the national level policy makers, museum goers, and 100 volunteers all around, and 500 books on museums. Next, please. These are all different kinds of unbranded so far. Just to give you an idea of, these are various kinds of selfie corners which will all get branded with quotations and a quirky kind of museum related things. Your bags carry a hashtag which is My Museums or Main. So you will have similar kinds of statements about the museums throughout the Museum Expo. Next, please. This is something which is a souvenir kit. You have received part of this kit today, but you are all invited to collect your kits, the major kits from the Museum Expo on the various days. You will have a miniature mascot, adult coloring book, jigsaw puzzle. I'm a fan of museums, posters, tote bags, and whatever else is written here. Lot of stuff which is all specially curated. The idea of this is basically to energize museums, to inspire museums to go back and be imaginative about their merchandising and souvenirs, because that is also a very, very essential part of how you consume museums in the country and abroad. Next, please. Also, it's a good source of revenue. Next, please. Yeah. So that is about it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
गुरुदेव रविंद्रनाथ ठाकुर जी का जयंती था। लास्ट नाइट जो यूनेस्को वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज साइट्स के अंदर यूनेस्को एडवाइजरी कमेटी का मीटिंग हुआ। इस मीटिंग में तय किया है आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के प्रपोजल पर यूनेस्को ने एडवाइजरी बोर्ड एक्सेप्ट किया है, जो कोलकाता का शांति निकेतन इसको 2023 जो वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज जनरल बॉडी मीटिंग को प्रपोज किया है, वो सितंबर 2023 में रियाद सऊदी अरेबिया में होगा। उस मीटिंग में क्योंकि एडवाइजरी बोर्ड का जो प्रपोजल रहते हैं 99% उस प्रपोजल को जनरल बॉडी मीटिंग में पास होता है। और आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी को मैं धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूं। शांति निकेतन कोलकाता का जो रविंद्रनाथ ठाकुर जी का रेजिडेंस था, वो यूनिवर्सिटी है उसी एरिया में, उस पूरा कैंपस को आज इस यूनेस्को वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज की साइट के शोकेस करने का ए रिच कल्चरल हेरिटेज टू द वर्ल्ड जो प्रपोज दिया है, मैं सरकार के ओर से इंस्पेक्शन किया है। मैं इसको भारत सरकार के तरफ से भी यूनेस्को को धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूं और आम जनता के ओर से मैं आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी को धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूं।
I think with this we come to the end of the press conference. After this, please stay back for an important segment. There will be a flag off of the museums on wheels van by the honorable dignitaries. तो आप सब बाहर आ जाइए कृपा।
मैं एक चीज सर ने जो कहा उसमें आपको क्लैरिफाई ये करना चाहती हूँ कि प्रधानमंत्री जी के कहने पर ये प्रपोजल रेड्डी जी के माध्यम से गया है और ये भारत की धरोहर को यूनेस्को धरोहर बनाने का काम किया गया। और इससे ज्यादा मैं कुछ नहीं कहूंगी। जैसे पूर्व में हम लोगों ने काम किया था और दुर्गा पूजा को ये इनटैंजिबल कल्चरल हेरिटेज का टैग मिला था, उसी तरीके से टैंजिबल कल्चरल हेरिटेज में रामप्पा के बाद इस बार का जो इंस्क्रिप्शन है वो शांति निकेतन का है।
So now I request Honorable Minister Kishan Reddy sir and Madam Meenakshi Lekhi Madam.
Obviously is the virtual representation of what's going to happen in the North and the South Block, because all the galleries from National Museum are going to be shifted there, and it's like a plan, the plan which is going to be executed, and we are hoping that it's going to be inaugurated by the Prime Minister. It's for everyone to see that this is what's going to happen in future, and we are at work. 18th May we will be inaugurating it. It's disclosing the plan actually. Only plan. It'll take some time before all this can come out. Yeah. No, our government always works with timelines, and we try to finish it before time.
Kunal has the mic. Recently read out.
This is Kunal from PTI. I have a two-part question. One is what went into the preparation for this expo, because it seems a very ambitious one and on something on a very large scale that we have not seen in recent days. And my second question is in terms of the MOUs for the 5 cities. What will be the modalities for that, and what will be the eventual project nature in these 5 cities as far as the cultural space is concerned? Thank you.
So a whole lot of it will be disclosing subsequently, because these are things which we've kept for the later inaugural parts, and when the MOUs get signed, we will disclose the text of those MOUs. But as of now, you can see the amount of work which has gone into it, and I must thank Mugdha and her team and the whole of Ministry of Culture, along with people dealing with museums across, and many museums which work with us. A lot of work has gone in, as you can see, and I must say concentrated work for past 1 year definitely. And we've been at it. We first started working on the gaps which we felt in the functioning, and also capacity building, exposure to recognition, to certification. So a whole lot of work which has gone into making of this. And I must say, you would have noticed another very small conversational point, but Mugdha ji has repeatedly spoken about Indus Saraswati civilization. So that is the shift which you can see around the entire conversation and narrative, that the civilization which is called Harappan civilization, because Harappa happened to be the first city where it got discovered, but there is a historicity which exists in this part of the country which is far more ancient than Harappa, including Lothal being one such space, which people need to focus on, work on, and that's our effort, that history, science, technology, museum spaces all come to recognize in terms with the entire cultural space which this country has to offer, and which is huge.
Virenjiti, would you like to ask a question?
जी देखिए, भारत की जब भी बात होती है तो दुख का विषय ये है कि हमारे जो विज्ञान था उसको वूडू में रिड्यूस किया गया कि वो विज्ञान नहीं, वो खाली अंधविश्वास है। लेकिन इस देश की जो संवर्धनशील सभ्यता संस्कृति है वो विज्ञान पर आधारित है, और आयुर्वेद विज्ञान का एक हिस्सा है, लेकिन वो वेद का भी हिस्सा है। शायद बहुत कम लोगों को ये जानकारी है। और ऐसे में आयुर्वेद के माध्यम से सभ्यता संस्कृति का प्रचार प्रसार हो, और साथ में लोगों को जैसे स्वास्थ्य संबंधित जितनी तकलीफें हैं, एक प्रिवेंटिव हेल्थ केयर भी है। तो जहां पर आप इतने सब लोगों को दवाइयां खिलाकर आप जीवित रखना चाहते, या उन दोषों को, उन विकारों को ही समाप्त कर प्रिवेंटिव हेल्थ केयर पर काम करना चाहते, तो भारत ने चाहे कोरोना का समय रहा हो या उसके बाद का समय रहा हो, आयुष मंत्रालय को जो प्रधानमंत्री जी ने घोषित किया, तो उसके पीछे की जो मंशा थी वो लोगों तक प्रिवेंटिव हेल्थ केयर अपनी सभ्यता संस्कृति के माध्यम से सही मायने में लोगों का विश्वास जागृत करना और वैज्ञानिक रूप से उसका बखान करना, उसके पीछे की मानसिकता थी। और जब त्रिदोष की विषय होता है और तीनों दोषों के आधार पर हमारा जो स्वास्थ्य है उसका चलन कैसे हो, ये भी लोगों तक पहुंचाने का विषय। मैं तो चाहूंगी कि इस म्यूजियम एक्सपो से प्रभावित होकर कोई अगर अन्य शहरों में और दिल्ली में मिलेट्स जैसे शुरू हुए हैं, साथ ही त्रिदोष त्रिविकार के आधार पर कोई थाली शुरू करे तो शायद हम सबको लाभ मिले। और इसके पीछे बहुत सारे हमारे वैद्य और अन्य तंत्र के लोग जो हैं, साथ में खानसामा जो खाना पकाने वाले लोग हैं, उन सबका जो है सम्मिलित मेहनत रहेगी।
हाँ जी, अरुण जी, would you like to ask?
Can't hear you very well. You think you need to switch on the mic or change the mic?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Ma'am, recently because of the government's sincere efforts, many stolen artifacts have
Hello.
come back to India.
That's right.
Will there be any scope of showcasing them at this museum expo?
Yes, we are showcasing, and I must take this opportunity to again bring focus onto two aspects. One is, ever since our government came into power in past few years, and I must thank my minister Sri G. Krishan Reddy ji for working very hard to bring back the artifacts, and the inspiration lies with Honorable Prime Minister, who has constantly guided us and told us to work very hard on these subjects. So you will be happy to know that more than 200 objects is what we have brought back recently in past 7-8 years, as compared to a few objects which existed prior to 2014. That's the kind of effort we have made. Second aspect, you must also understand that at the policy level, when we are having conversations around culture and part of G20, the focus has been returning heritage to the places of their origin, because it's not just a piece of art, it is a piece which showcases and depicts the faith and belief of the people, and that rightfully should be brought back to the people it belongs to. This is an occasion where I want to make a point, and the point is many basements in many universities and places are carrying the artifacts of people who are living and alive, relating it to northeast of my country. So in many art pieces in the name of art were taken away at the time of imperialist powers, at the time of our subjugation, and a whole lot of them are, human body parts to the people used to be photographed, and they were denuded of their jewelry pieces, etc. I think they belong to the people, and Government of India is pursuing those matters to bring it back to the very people it belongs to. So there's a lot of emotional aspect, and it's only right that right thing should take place, and right must happen, and justice be restored to the people it belongs to.
It will be a virtual showcasing, or it will be physically present for those artifacts?
Both options are there, and I really don't want to describe it more, because you should see it, feel it, and appreciate it. Ji.
Just a second, आप माइक लेंगे सर्जना जी?
नमस्कार मैम, मैं सर्जना शर्मा सनमार्ग से हूँ। आपने राग माला के बारे में मैडम सिन्हा ने बताया है। थोड़ा सा हम ये जानना चाहेंगे कि जो हमारे रागास हैं वो सिर्फ म्यूजिक नहीं, उनके बहुत अच्छे इफेक्ट्स हैं। कि राग मल्हार गाते तो बारिश आती है, दीपक गाते तो दीपक जल जाते हैं। तो आप इसको हो सकता है आप एक्सप्लेन ना करना चाहिए, तो इसको आप कैसे डिपिक्ट करेंगे इन रागास को?
डिपिक्शन देखिए, ये इसमें
कहने का मतलब कि हेल्थ के साथ रागों का जो प्रयोग हुआ है, क्या उसको भी इस पे प्रेजेंटेशन?
वो भी देखिए प्रेजेंटेशन है, और उस प्रेजेंटेशन के इफेक्ट में जैसे अभी दिखाया गया, एक सिंबॉलिक आपको दिखाया गया जिसमें मिनिएचर पेंटिंग दिखाई। तो जब राग का विषय आता है तो वो सुनने का विषय है, तो आपका जो श्रोत सुनने की जो कैपेसिटी है, श्रुति, और दूसरा उसका जो एस्पेक्ट है कि हर आर्टिस्ट ने उस चीज को अपनी तरीके से कहा। तो एक ने गा कर कहा, दूसरे ने उसका चित्रण करके कहा, और चित्र से आप राग को पहचान सकते हैं। और उसका जो आधार है, मूल आधार जो है, वो कभी सीजन पर आधारित है, कभी उसकी प्रवृत्ति पर आधारित है, कभी उसके गायन पर आधारित है। तो वो सब ज्ञान जो है उसमें मैं अगर इसको जोड़ना चाहूँ तो मैं इसको जोड़ना चाहती हूँ कि नाद योग के विषय में भी भारतीय परंपराएं हैं। तो ये सब जो नाद योग है कि सुनने से उसका इफेक्ट आपके शरीर पर और आसपास कैसा पड़ता है। तो जो हमारी मान्यता है कि एनर्जी की डिफरेंट फॉर्म्स हैं और उस एनर्जी की डिफरेंट फॉर्म्स यानी जो फिजिकल है और जो मतलब पोटेंशियल एनर्जी, काइनेटिक एनर्जी और आसपास जो वाइब्रेशन। तो लाइफ इज नथिंग अबाउट वाइब्रेशन, फ्रीक्वेंसी, और वो वाइब्रेशन और फ्रीक्वेंसी के माध्यम से आप सुने, महसूस करें और तत्व ज्ञान को आधार बनाकर आगे की अपनी चेतना का विकास करें। वही इसका मूलभूत जो आधार है वो ये रहने वाला है। Absolutely, it's scientific. It's quantum physics. It's theory of energy. It's potential energy plus kinetic energy remains constant, along with the impact of energy, frequency, and vibration on a living being, or even for a dead being, for that matter. And transition of living and animate and inanimate objects. Manjuri.
मेरा सवाल है कि आज सरकार संस्कृति को हर तरफ फैलाने के लिए बिल्कुल बड़े बड़े शहरों में तो बहुत सारी एक्सरसाइज हो रही है, सरकार बहुत कुछ कर रही है, लेकिन हमारी टायर 2, टायर 3 की सिटी को है, उन तक पहुंचने के लिए सरकार क्या कर रही है? खास करके तो हमारी यंगर जनरेशन है, उनके लिए म्यूजियम वगैरह की जो चीजें हैं वो सिर्फ स्कूली कवायद तक रह जाती है। जब तक स्कूल उनको कंपलसरी कहीं दिखाने, उनके अंदर से जो चीज आनी चाहिए उस तरह की चीजें नहीं होती। तो यंगस्टर्स को जोड़ने के लिए सरकार संस्कृति मंत्रालय क्या कर रहा है?
आपको सुनकर अच्छा लगेगा कि जो 150 के आसपास 143 जो नए म्यूजियम बने हैं 2014 के बाद देश भर में, वो टायर 2 सिटीज के अंदर बने हैं और ऐसे विषयों पर बने हैं जिनके बारे में पहले शायद कोई विशेष ध्यान नहीं दिया जा रहा था। जैसे बिरसा मुंडा म्यूजियम है या प्रधानमंत्री संग्रहालय है। प्रधानमंत्री संग्रहालय भले ही दिल्ली में है मगर उसके पीछे बहुत सारे इस प्रकार के कारण है कि ऑन साइट म्यूजियम्स हैं और अभी इसी रास्ते को विकास करने के लिए बहुत अन्य ऐसे स्थानों पर म्यूजियम्स बन रहे हैं जो शायद अभी तक देश की बड़ी बड़ी धरोहर वहां पर है लेकिन वो नक्शे पर नहीं आ पाई है। तो हमारा प्रयास है कि देश के हर कोने में जहां हमारी सभ्यता संस्कृति का वास है वहां से सिलेक्ट जगहों के ऊपर हम इसका प्रचार प्रसार कर सके और हमारी सभ्यता संस्कृति जो हजारों वर्ष ईसा पूर्व की सभ्यता संस्कृति है, तो पहले तो देशवासी ही उस पर गौरव अपने आप को गौरवान्वित करें और उसके साथ जुड़े और उसके बाद उस गौरवशाली इतिहास को देश दुनिया में पहचान मिले।
Ma'am, this is Amrita from Deccan Herald. I wanted to ask a question regarding the game that you had developed. Two questions I have. The first is the game going to be available on platforms like PlayStation, because that's where a lot of gamers are? And the second question I have is, you mentioned that the virtual museum that we are going to see, the North Block South Block Museum, will have exhibits from the National Museum. Then what happens to the National Museum when we shift everything there?
National Museum will not be here. National Museum will be the North Block and the South Block. And this will be part of the Kartavya Path and the annexes of Kartavya Path. There will be other buildings. And so far as the availability of game is, we will try and promote this game on most platforms, and of course on our Government of India platform it will be available so that more and more people get associated with it. And more people, I mean, this will be another format through which the younger generations need to get attracted. And culture, I must say, the culture of going to the museums need to be brought back in focus. And I remember many years ago as a child, I have also been to museums through school trips. But when my children were growing up, it was a personal effort between me and my husband to bring the children to the museum every weekend, one museum or the other museum. I think parental supervision and parental interest in their culture, in their value system, will go a long way in promoting this culture. I think on weekend when you take kids to the theatre, to the McDonald's, I'm nothing against that, but I feel museum going activity also has to be brought in to focus by the parents as a living space. I mean, you don't become a piece of, colloquially you say, oh, so and so is like a piece on the shelf of a museum, which is to indicate a dead mindset. Whereas we are trying to create museums as living spaces in which things have to happen, younger generation need to come in and need to be connected to our history, art, craft, culture, science, technology, everything. So more and more activity, more and more visits where living people get connected and carry on the tradition to the future generations.
ये दिल्ली में 2 प्रोजेक्ट शुरू हुए थे 3 साल पहले। एक आप लोगों ने कमेटी बैठाई थी जिसमें ये था कि दारा शिकोह की कब्र को खोजने का काम सौंपा गया था। दूसरा प्रोजेक्ट ये था कि पुरानी दिल्ली की पुरातात्विक खुदाई को शुरू हुई थी, तो उस बारे में क्या अभी तक प्रोग्रेस है?
ये दिल्ली सर्कल की चीजें हैं, मैं स्पेसिफिकली इसका जवाब नहीं दे सकती क्योंकि इस पे काम चल रहा है, मगर आपको दिल्ली के इतिहास से संबंधित एक बात जरूर बताना चाहूंगी कि मुझे नहीं लगता कि दिल्ली में बहुत लोगों को ये जानकारी है कि पृथ्वीराज चौहान का जो कार्यक्षेत्र था या राज था वो कहाँ से था। अधिकतर लोग आपको पता बताएंगे अजमेर का या राजस्थान का, लेकिन उनको ये नहीं पता होगा कि अनंगपाल तोमर जो दिल्ली का राजा था और ये सल्तनत पीरियड से शुरू होने का जो दिल्ली का इतिहास है 7वीं शताब्दी से पूर्व और 7वीं से 11वीं शताब्दी तक का, उसका जो महल है वो दिल्ली के अंदर मौजूद है और उसके ऊपर अब हमने काम शुरू किया है। और हमने मतलब ये कल्चर मिनिस्ट्री ने कुछ मदद की है, लेकिन प्राइमरीली क्योंकि वो विभाग वो जो है अभी ASI के अंडर नहीं है, तो दिल्ली के लेफ्टिनेंट गवर्नर के माध्यम से उस पर कार्रवाई शुरू हुई है और दिल्ली को दिल्ली का इतिहास बताने का काम शुरू किया गया है। क्योंकि ऐसा प्रतीत होता है कि दिल्ली में सल्तनत पीरियड से पूर्व दिल्ली ही नहीं थी, और मैं कभी हंस के कहती हूँ कि भाई वो कौन सी जुगी लूटने के लिए आते थे, वो जगह तो बताओ। तो जाहिर तौर पर दिल्ली का इतिहास बहुत पुराना है, लेकिन किन्हीं कारणों से उसको छुपाकर दबाकर रखा गया। लेकिन समय है कि पृथ्वीराज चौहान और उससे पूर्व का जो दिल्ली का इतिहास है वो दिल्ली की जनता और देश की जनता के सामने आना चाहिए। उस पर थोड़ा काम शुरू हुआ है, लेकिन उस पर बहुत काम की आवश्यकता है।
मैम एक क्वेश्चन है मेरा, आपने अभी बात ब्रह्म प्रकाश जी न्यूज से, मेरा सवाल इसी से रिलेटेड है जो अभी आपने आंसर दिया। दिल्ली में अक्सर लोग कहते हैं, मुझे इतिहासकार कह रहे थे कि जब नई दिल्ली में जाता हूँ तो ऐसा लगता है किसी कब्रिस्तान में चला गया, अकबर रोड, बाबर रोड। तो दिल्ली में आपने कहा कई शासक हुए हैं, कई सम्राट हुए हैं, तो आपको नहीं लगता कि लुटियन में उनके भी नाम रखे जाने चाहिए किसी सड़कों पर ताकि वो भी हिस्ट्री दिखाई जा सके? तो इस दिशा में क्या सरकार कुछ करने जा रही है?
देखिए, कुछ चीजें सरकार नहीं करती है, जनता करती है, और एक जनता के रिप्रेजेंटेटिव होने के नाते मैं आपको आश्वासन देती हूँ कि मैंने पूर्व में भी ऐसे काम किए और आगे भी करते रहेंगे जब तक चीजें सुधर नहीं जाती।
भाई नितिन, जो डेली न्यूज सुना है, ये जो इंटरनेशनल एक्सपो होगा म्यूजियम का, क्या बाकी और शहरों में हर साल होगा और उसका स्वरूप क्या होगा?
देखिए, ये हमारा, मैं मुग्धा जी को और माननीय कृष्ण रेड्डी जी हमारे मंत्री जी को धन्यवाद देना चाहती हूँ कि माननीय रेड्डी जी के नेतृत्व में इसका आयोजन किया गया और मुग्धा जी ने इसमें बहुत काम किया, पूरी टीम ने लगकर ये प्रस्तुति की है। और अभी हम देखेंगे कि हर साल इसको कर पाए या जैसे व्यवस्था बनेगी आपको सूचना भी देंगे। और आपको ये समझना होगा कि कल्चर अपने आप में एक अर्थव्यवस्था का, इकोनॉमी का हिस्सा है और उस अर्थव्यवस्था में इसका योगदान जो है कई जगहों पर बहुत अधिक है। मगर दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण भारत के अंदर जबकि हमारे पास सबसे अधिक संपदा है, लेकिन उस संपदा के बावजूद हम इसको एनकैश नहीं कर पाए हैं। तो इस एक्सपो के माध्यम से कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग, knowledge sharing और institutionalization of forces, awareness creation, बहुत सारे ऐसे काम किए जा रहे हैं और अर्थव्यवस्था में भी कल्चर और संस्कृति जो है एक बड़ा हिस्सा बन पाए उसका भी प्रयास रहेगा और आगे जैसी सूचना होगी हम आपको जरूर उपलब्ध कराएंगे.
Just a small follow-up on my previous question. So, what were the criteria that were used to select these museums? Because there are so many, you can't put them all. That's number one. Number two, we are in the middle of G20 presidency of India, and so many culture working group and tourism working group meetings have already taken place. Few more are in the pipeline. Do you feel that an event like this, which is so grand in nature, will actually dovetail into India's soft power that we are trying to see on various occasions? Thank you.
So I must say India has the soft power, except we've not, this is an attempt to make it an economic component to the soft power also. Going back to the fact that the number of people you need to work in the museum, conservationists, experts, technicians, economy related, these are all economic activities. In addition to all this being securing the culture activity. So it's a knowledge activity on one side, on the other side it's an economic activity. So the focus is to bridge this gap and get more and more people associated with it. And when people talk about skills, when people talk about lack of skills, I always bring it back to the point that a lot of students do history honors and a lot of students study history as part of the subject, but that doesn't make them an archaeologist. That doesn't give them a diploma course in conservation. So the need is to shift the focus and they become unskilled labor or unskilled youth. The focus has to be on attaching their bookish knowledge to the practical aspect and some amount of vocational training, diploma, degree, courses in management, because world needs you. Not just India, but the world also needs you. And India, which has a civilizational history of few thousand BC, how many people can claim that? Do we have the people who can preserve this history? So for preservation, conservation, propagation, you need more and more experts in these fields, and of course the knowledge behind all this. So Expo is an attempt to get the world's best into participation. We have participated last year in an online, we did a virtual summit. Through the virtual summit, a lot of people participated and a lot of interest was showcased. So based on that, we've got people. There is a collaboration which is going across the countries, and that's the basis on which people have been selected and museums have been selected, and many a times through nomination also. Nomination by the other governments.
फ्रेंड्स, एक न्यूज़ में गुड न्यूज़ फॉर इंडिया मैं आपको बताना